Good evening. Welcome to the Yorktown Central School District Board of Education meeting for June 5th, 2017. Can I have a motion to go into executive session for the matters pertaining to the employment history of particular individuals and contractual negotiations?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Can I have a motion to go back into public session?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good evening. Welcome to the Yorktown Central School District Board of Education meeting for June 5th, 2017. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be followed by a moment of silence for our armed forces and those in our community who have lost loved ones, especially remembering the father of Karen Firestone and the mother-in-law of Maureen O'Keefe.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Sorry we were late, and thank you for your patience. We're going to start with public comment on agenda-related items. Is anybody wishing to speak on agenda-related items? No. Okay, Ralph, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. And like Mrs. Carbone, please excuse us for being late for coming out. But here we are. And at any rate, we're here to present you with some good news. So I have Mrs. Menakal in the audience, and she would love to come up to the podium and introduce who's with her, and then talk about the Foundation for Excellence and some of the grants. She's really here. That's okay. We were the ones that were 20 minutes late.
Good evening. My name is Chris Menakal, and I am the president of the Foundation for Excellence in Yorktown Education. The FFE runs fundraising events during the school year with the goal of funding teacher grants to enrich the classroom experience of YCSD students. Events this year included a family picture day, a reusable tote bag sale, a camp information night, and the very first annual community event, the Husker Hoedown. This year was also a milestone year for the Foundation. In the 24 years since the Foundation for Excellence was founded, officially this year we have raised over $500,000 for the Yorktown schools.
Beautiful. Nice.
I am joined tonight by my Vice President, Marjorie Roll, she's back there, and Marjorie Rita, and one of our board members, Maria Roll. Let's see, I apologize for that. Okay. We are proud to be here tonight to inform the Board of Ed and the school community that the Foundation was able to fund completely or in part with some help from the Mohansic PTA, the Mildred East Rang Middle School PTA, and the high school PTA, 14 teacher grants, and we were able to award 2 $1,000 scholarships to Yorktown high school graduates. We are blessed to have dedicated out-of-the-box teachers in our district who are always coming up with inventive ways to reach and inspire our students. And we are privileged to have many of those teachers here tonight who I would like to thank and ask stand and be recognized this evening. Pretty much everybody here in the audience. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. It was really an honor to read all of your grants. This was a banner year. We actually received over 40 grants this year. And with some of the private funding and funding from the PTA, when it's all said and done, we'll probably have granted about 18 of them, so almost half. We hope to maybe do more next year. And we are very happy to present this evening the Board of Education with a check for $20,300. Thank you. So I bring up the big check.
You're gonna point that way? Yeah. Do you want to? Mrs. Carbone is going to join you. Why don't you come up and take a photo? How do you, Dennis? Are you able to see us?
Do you want us there?
We're good. Gabrielle, we're okay with you too? Something's up. There you go. Come on in. Now we're good. So, of course, on behalf of the Board of Education and the administrative team, we thank the foundation so much. Christine, we know how hard you work, and Mrs. Rita, and also Mrs. Roll, and I'm not going to reverse your names. We appreciate it. Now that she's made the mistake, I don't want to keep it up. Maybe we would like to read some of the grants aloud. Is that okay with you? That would be beautiful. So we thank you, and teachers, of course, we understand how hard you work with the students and how much you want additional opportunities to work with them on current topics and issues and activities, and we thank you for your time, your interest, and enjoy those grants.
Awesome. So Anna Maria Fazio was granted with a computer programming with Ozobots in the classroom. Pamela Chesser and the combined third grade teachers of Brookside and Mohansick School will be taking all of the third grade students to the wolf conservation to do a Wolves in the Wild study. Shelby Graff will be getting a document camera for her classroom. Ms. Roper and Mr. Cavallo will be also getting granted with some Ozobots for their classroom so that they can do some reasoning and coding concepts. Marion Ricci will be getting a flamenco dancing seminar to come to the middle school to help with the cultural enrichment. Ms. Maraglia and Ms. Ames will be getting a portable sound system that will be used in the Brookside School to help the students with public presentation. The Launching a Love of Literacy with Ms. Maraglia and Mrs. Menzie will be doing read-along CD books and kits that will be in the library for all the students to enjoy. Ms. Del Bazo will be doing an imagination playground in the kindergarten with gigantic blocks, which is going to be really cool. Ms. Horowitz and the combined Ms. Golio and Ms. Ward and Ms. Silverman will be doing a mindful place in the middle school.
Guidance team.
Guidance team. Thank you. Guidance team. We'll be doing a mindful place for the students to reflect and get away from the stresses of middle school life. There'll be some STEM workstations going to Mr. Latka and Mrs. Sniffen. There will also be creating a classroom that cultivates the 4 C's, which Ms. Formaro and Ms. Cavallo are going to have to remind me what the C's are because I don't remember. But also kind of, it attacked different learning styles. So it takes the typical classroom and turns it more into a collaborative, open classroom that allows the students to kind of move around in different areas of learning. Ms. Farrell is getting an art easel so that she can easily manage and organize her art supplies. And Mrs. Brancati will be getting STEM kits for her classroom in grade 3 in Brookside. And promoting the creativity of iPads and technology is Ms. Kivel, Ms. Spiridigliosi, Ms. Mines, and Ms. Statler. And that is going to allow some of the 4th grade students to create multimedia presentations and movie production to enhance the learning in their different areas in their classroom. And that's a brief lowdown of what we got.
And that's great. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to say one person's name over, only because I don't want anybody to think we hired somebody.
I apologize.
And no, that's okay. It's Mrs. Burns.
Oh, I said Bynes.
That's
Sorry.
okay. That's what we just left out the.
Thanks, Mrs.
It's okay.
Burns.
Yeah, yes, Mrs. Burns. So, Yeah, so thank you very much, Chris, and thank you all for your participation. I know that you're going to be excited about getting all of these things going in your classroom in the fall. It really is exciting, and I'm sure the kids are going to really enjoy their time with steaming and stemming and coding and wool. Yeah, wool. Forget. Forget. And wolves, yeah, wolves, and lions and tigers and bears. We really appreciate your hard work, Foundation, and teachers, we appreciate your interest in getting grants and extra monies for your classroom. I know that maybe you know what a good education report would be next year is for some of the teachers to come back to talk about how they've used their grants and how the kids have benefited from it. Maybe it would be a good news item. What do you think?
Yes.
Terrific.
We've been very fortunate over the years. The foundation has been a very good partner to the school district, and we thank them for that.
Great job. Okay, so I think we can let all of our teachers and administrators go home, except for Margaret Dodonna. And I think we roped Deirdre Amerling into sticking around also. So everybody else, thank you for coming. Thanks.
Can I have a motion to approve the Foundation for Excellence grants along with the PTSA grants?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Well, thank you very much. We're up to the education report.
Good evening. I'm here tonight, and I'm joined by our Director of Student and Staff Evaluation Data, which is David Leese, with our Director of Technology, Patrice Hattie-George, and one of our elementary second grade teachers at Brookside, Margaret Dodonna. We're going to speak to you this evening briefly on data and technology in action and supporting classroom instruction and student achievement. As you know, the curriculum office, the data department, and the technology department have interrelated goals that all work together for the overall goal of improving student achievement. When you look at our district goals that were part of the superintendent's action plan for the 2016-17 school year, you can see that our curriculum and instruction goals that speak to develop and implement common standards-based assessments that are linked to K-5 modules for ELA and mathematics. If you may recall, back in our September board meeting, David and I discussed some of the summer work that took place in terms of work in developing common assessments at the K-5 level. This has been an ongoing initiative that we have utilized both Pam Chesser and Mary Froats and their expertise to help guide us in that process. Also in March, we spoke to you about these standards-based report cards and how we've utilized data to develop and guide our instruction and to use that information to help develop our report cards. So those are the curriculum instruction goals that we're going to talk about tonight. In terms of technology, the goals that we have addressed are to support the rapid growth of the K-12 mobile learning environment, including our one-to-one Chromebook model, and expanding the use of district-provided mobile devices across all grade levels. And in addition, another technology goal that we are focusing on is in conjunction with the Director of Student and Staff Evaluation Data to continue to assure the safe and secure access to student data and to facilitate the use of that data to inform instruction. We've continually looked at standardized test results such as our state ELA and math tests to determine areas of strengths and needs for our students. What we really need to be sure we're continuing to focus on as well is how can we use more formative classroom instruction and be very closely linked to what the students are learning on a day-to-day basis and how we're using that to make sure our instruction is targeting all the needs.
Thank you. So when we talk about data, one of the things that we realize now more and more than ever is now when we're trying to deal with all the state mandates, the changes in Common Core, and the rigor in the Common Core learning standards, we need to really think about how we're using our data and how we get it to the teachers. It needs to be accessible, it needs to be timely, and it needs to be relevant for what's going on in the classroom. So what we say is data is one of the most powerful tools to inform good decisions and create opportunities for all of our students. The data helps us to make the connections we need between the instruction and moving them forward to getting to the achievement that we want them to reach. One of the ways we do that is by incorporating tools such as eDoctrina and building in these standards assessments, using the technology at our fingertips, such as the Chromebooks and touchpad devices that allow us the accessibility to real-time assessments and to be able to turn data around. So many times nowadays do we have the opportunity to sit and look at how quickly we could take that data and use it in the classroom. It wasn't that long ago where teachers would have to take all of that data and process it by hand. By the time they would put it all together and put it in a meaningful format, it'd be 2, 3, possibly 3 weeks later after they have already learned it for the students, and they would have to maybe revisit it, or they would have already forgotten that and they've moved on to the next unit, so it wasn't relevant anymore. So for us, it's very important that the timeliness of the data is in the hands of the teachers. So when we look at data and how it's important to us, we think about using data and developing and establishing a protocol and culture for using data, meaning we want to make it part of our everyday life in the classroom. It becomes a tool for communicating, not only with students and helping them to take ownership of their own learning, communicating with parents, working with the grade levels, working with district administrators, building administrators, and making decisions on where we need to move forward, not only in the classroom, but as a building and as a district. And all of that comes together. Our teachers are able to identify immediately where their students are succeeding and where they're struggling right now. And then, again, we could communicate with parents through our standards-based report cards and through parent-teacher conferences. So when we pull all this together, what does it look like in a classroom? So what I'd like you to do is take a moment and just actually look up at the screen at the next picture. This is data in action. In a typical day in the classroom, what you're seeing is while we're providing the instruction, we're building a classroom environment set up of various stations where we're learning, we're creating, we're assessing, and then we're reflecting on all that data and applying it to how we're doing our instruction. But what leads us to doing that and what helps us in that is all of the accessible technology that we have.
Good evening, everyone. I'm
Patrice.
just here to comment a little bit, go back to those nice pictures, yes, on the photos that we have here. And I have to say, I really love these pictures. If you look at them, all the children are working together collaboratively with each other as well as with their teachers. And in some cases, they happen to be using digital devices. Now, this facilitating this type of environment didn't happen overnight. We actually had a vision probably about 8 to 10 years ago to design a rich digital learning environment, and this is what it looks like. We created a robust network infrastructure, which we continue to upgrade and expand. And we wanted to offer flexibility in the classroom, as you can see with mobile learning devices. And that really has become the norm throughout the district. But making that happen required literally miles and miles of installing Ethernet cabling. We also embraced the Google platform about 4 years ago, and we did it because it's simple. It's simple for all users, whether it's a kindergarten student all the way on up to the superintendent. And it's also simple for our IT team to manage. So this is a typical classroom in our district. The technology is extremely reliable, and the users, staff, teachers, students, are quite fluent with its use. And most importantly, we have a highly qualified teacher in the classroom. And that would be Margaret Dodona. Who's next?
Hi, everyone.
Good evening, Margaret.
Hi. So I'll just talk a little bit about what I did during this lesson. So David came into my classroom, and we wanted to give the last assessment for the Engage New York module. I was teaching my second grade students on fairy tales and tall tales. The assessment was a domain-specific vocabulary assessment. It's all the vocabulary they learned within the different stories and tales that I taught them. So I had one station with David, and they were using the Chromebooks to actually take the assessment. Each child got their own card with a little QR code on it, and they were able to log into eDoctrina immediately by having the camera on the Chromebook, scan the QR code, and get right to the test. So it was very, very quick. My other stations were just culminating activities that went with the fairy tales and tall tales that I taught my students. So I had one group actually working with the vocabulary, doing a type of Pictionary station. So they would choose a vocabulary word that they were going to be assessed on in David's station, and then draw a picture of it, and the rest of the students in their group had a guess. I had another station where the students created their own fairy tale. So they were able to roll a dice, and if they rolled a 2, maybe they had a king in their story, and then they moved on to a setting. If they rolled a 3, maybe their setting was in a forest. So they rolled a dice and developed an organized brainstorm of a story, and then used that to create one on their own based on what they learned through the modules and my instruction. And then my other center was for the students to work on a synonym-antonym match based on all the vocabulary words within the Engaged New York tales and tall tales and fairy tales. And then my last center that I had students in was create your own tall tale. So they were able to follow, it was almost like a fill-in-the-blank sheet where they followed that to create their own tall tale based on the Engaged New York module. And that's basically what you see going on. After about 10-15 minutes, they switched centers. One center went to take the assessment, and one student group went to take the assessment, and the rest changed stations, so they all got to participate in every center I created. So that's what's going on in the photos. Thank you.
Thank you.
What you do.
So you can see Ms. Dodona really has a very good handle on her students and where they're functioning. And each of those stations that she was talking about, she structures it so that the students who are working on the same skill group or have the same skill needs are grouped together throughout the activities. When we talk about student data and what's really important, we really need to start at the curriculum level. So what is the essential knowledge that we expect the students to walk away from in a particular unit? For the particular day's class, what are the essential skills of that lesson that you want to be sure that the students master? What formative assessment will you use to determine if they've mastered that? Then the teacher needs to take a step back and say, what am I going to do with this assessment data to help move each and every student forward in their abilities? And then how do I take that data and involve the students more fully in understanding what they need to do? So when you look at the data, it really has different connections throughout everything a teacher does, from defining the learning, synthesizing, creating activities, assessing for understanding, applying data to inform instruction, teaching and instruction, and right back to making connections again. What I really like about being very concrete and specific with what you expect the students to do, and therefore assessing that those skills that you're looking for, the next step is to have those conversations with the individual students so they can understand what it is you're expecting them to learn and how you're going to help them get there. It really gets the student and teacher collaboration and student ownership much more formally defined for teachers. So that was such a great example of that. The station that utilized the online assessment that was developed with the help of Pam Chesser, who was here with us, and with David, putting it into the eDoctrina system, those students logged on to that computer and were able to do that assessment immediately, and the results of that were immediately available to the teacher. So we're going to show you the next slide. This is the report that the teacher automatically gets, and it shows the students, their names are not listed there, it's a code, but the green, the students were mastering each of those skills. The yellow, the students were showing some area of weakness, and the red is really an area where that student needs to work more carefully, and the teacher gets that specific information right away. So I'm going to let Margaret come back and share with you how effective this was.
So just to frame things and put it in context, all of these activities occurred in about an hour and a half within the classroom in an ELA block. So from start to finish, the instruction was delivered, we did the assessment, and we're able to then turn around this report within an hour and a half and get it back into the hands of the teacher. So when we talk about creating a protocol and establishing a culture for using data every day, this is the way that we accomplish that. And Margaret's going to share with you now what she was able to accomplish just by getting this data in the time that we were able to turn it around for her.
So again, the assessment was on the domain-specific vocabulary in the Engage New York modules of fairy tales and tall tales for second grade. On the top, you can't really read it on the screen, but I'm sure you can see on your papers, I feel my students excelled more in being able to understand the vocabulary words within the context of the tales, but struggled and need additional support with applying the definitions of the vocabulary words and applying the vocabulary words into real-world situations. For example, in Pico's Bill, the tall tale, it's an exaggeration that at the end of the tale, he rides a tornado. So that's an exaggeration. It's a stretch of the truth. And then for a student to use that word exaggeration and apply it to a real-world experience, they would say something like, I caught a fish and it was as big as my mom's car. You know, so I felt that some of my students kind of needed additional support in using those vocabulary words outside of its context that they were taught it into real-world experiences. So I was able to see that from the data, and then from that create intervention groups with about 8 students, and I split them up into 4 groups. And before I even did that, I actually like to go over the assessment with my students in a whole group. I don't want them to think that a test is just a test, and after you take it, you forget about it. So what I like to do is I like to gather them into a whole group, and I like to make meaning out of why we take tests. It's important because it helps us learn, and it helps them learn, which makes their learning more meaningful for them, which they take ownership for their learning by being able to understand, okay, I got this wrong, let me see why, and let me see what I can do next time in order to get it correct. So I like to go over the entire test with the students and then do my intervention groups. So I created my intervention groups, and what I did was I created 2 worksheets. The first worksheet I worked on with them had a bunch of adjectives that describe the cover of books that I gave them. So silly, scary, romantic, and they applied their knowledge of the adjective to that book cover. And then after we did that together, I asked them to use the adjective again, but think about a book cover from what they've read and apply the word to what they've read. So that helps them with applying a word that they learned in context to a real-world experience. And then the second one I did was with different foods, spicy, sour, sweet. So I had a bunch of different foods, and they matched the adjective to the food, and then I had them think of another food that they've seen in their world experiences that related to it. So a lot of the kids said, well, brownies are sweet, which is great. The one that really was hard for them was sour, because the example I gave them was a lemon, and it was hard for them to think of something else that was sour. So some of them thought of lime, which I thought was good, and some of them thought of lemonade, which is fine as well, because it worked. So I was able to create their intervention groups. And the beauty of eDoctrina is that it let me do that 4 days later. David came into my classroom on a Wednesday. I took the data. The teacher doesn't have to sit there and grade papers. eDoctrina does it all for you. So it gives the teacher and myself more time to prepare instruction, and that's really what it's all about. Those numbers on there don't define who my students are, it defines where I have to go with my instruction. That's great. So, and that's about it. I haven't given them a second assessment yet, but I'll let you know how it goes when I do.
So we thought that this would be a great opportunity for you to see an example of some of what we've spoken about throughout the course of the year, which was the development of the common assessments, working on our vertical alignment of our ELA curriculum, K-12, but we were focusing this year on our K-5 common assessments, that every student would have certain skills that they were required to master over the course of the year, and every student on that grade would have a common assessment. at each time they did a different module. This is more readily available to us than our state assessment data, which we're waiting for at the end of a school year. So this really helps the teachers to be able to pinpoint different changes. And our goal moving forward is to see what other ways can we use eDoctrina to provide this automatic data back right to us in such a quick way that can be more useful to the teachers. Do you have any questions for the four of us?
Well, yeah, but first, this was really pretty amazing.
You know, and I have to give kudos to Ms. Dodona, who is an absolute rock star in the classroom. This is her second year with us, and she is willing to embrace anything we give her, and she really wants to hone her craft, and she is well on her way to doing that.
I whispered
and
to
kudos
Ralph.
to Mrs. Ammerling, who was here as well, who did hire her.
I whispered to Ralph, I want to be in her classroom. Cheryl, do you have any questions?
Yeah, the presentation was wonderful, and it's great to see how it all comes together in the classroom. I've got to imagine there are some challenges to using the digital devices in the classrooms. What would you say are some of the challenges that you see specifically with the elementary population?
I think probably the biggest one is logging on, and especially for the kindergartners and the first graders. So we are similar. I know David spoke. He mentioned that in using eDoctrina, they used a type of badge to quickly log in the students. We're actually exploring something similar to enable the students to easily log on to a Chromebook. That would save so much time and just make it so much easier, just get right into it. So yeah, so it's really, things are really moving very quickly now. It's exciting.
That's great. Thank you.
Tom?
First, I'd like to also say I really enjoyed the presentation, and I just love the way we've pulled together a team approach, leveraging our IT infrastructure, our device strategy, our data approach with a learning solution. It was really, really amazing to see. Just one question around our wireless access. Do we have wireless access in all of our learning spaces?
We have wireless everywhere, and we just completed a complete rewiring. We ran wires to every single learning space, and that's where literally miles and miles of Ethernet cabling. And we have installed wireless access points, not in every classroom because it's not necessary, but basically it's in alternating spaces. But going forward, we're prepared. If there are other, we need more access points, the cabling is there in every classroom. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Rashmi?
It was a great presentation. I have a question. Do you use this approach year-round, or at specific times during the instructional year? Do you use it for ELA and for math? How do you use it? Or how else do you use it? We saw some examples.
So this is something that when we go back to, again, talking about having a culture for using data, it's something that we want to make part of our practice every day. It's something that we're talking about. It's not something that just comes up a couple times a year in a meeting randomly. These are conversations that happen at the grade level. They happen in professional development, and it's always embedded in what we're doing when we're doing our own reflection on how we do our own business. So right now we've developed, the first stage was, I think, to get into the common standard grade level assessments, but this tool is what's been great and how we'll expand moving forward is teachers will really be able to use this tool and this program to design any level assessment they want, whether it be an exit ticket, whether it be a unit assessment, whether it be a multi-year benchmark assessment. They'll have this available to them, and the biggest part of it is the accessibility, how quickly we could turn around the data and put it in the hands of the teachers and the students for having those rich conversations.
Thank you.
Mike?
Can I just add to David's answer on that for Rashmi's question? Because we were focused on K-5 this year and rolling out these common assessments using eDoctrina, it was our first opportunity to use that system to do so. I was really surprised to see at one of our curriculum councils when we shared what the program can do and what was happening with K-5, even though we weren't expecting it, we did have high school teachers in the math department with Mr. Gallis decide to utilize this system for their current assessments that they have. And what's so helpful is that the teachers will tag the standard that each question goes to, and that's what gives us the skills by the current standards that the students need to be working on. So it did go beyond what we were considering to do this year. Our goal moving forward is that this work will be done 6 through 12 next year, and that's where David will play a very critical role in getting out into the buildings to make this happen and to spread the use of this system to get us more data in a more quick fashion. And everything we do is always so kind of deliberate and planned out, and this will be our next step moving forward for that.
Thank you.
Anything?
I have a question about the chart that's up. It appears that the 3 of the 4 categories were 1 or 2 question topics, and then the one that they seem to struggle with had, looks like a dozen, if I can read the print right. Was that determined ahead of time, or is that something that evolved during the lesson to say, it looks like we're struggling here? How do I, do I keep drilling down on it? Can you just talk about that a little?
So first, let me address that from a technical perspective. So anytime when we're doing an assessment design, we'll build the questions into the assessment and then link the standards that they address. But that's only the first step. When we start to look at these reports, we can then see where we need to focus. So if it means creating an additional assessment, tweaking what standards we're focusing on, and then specifying and customizing for what the students need in the classroom, Ms. Dodona can speak to you exactly how she took this report and adjusted her instruction by creating different groups, adjusting the groups based on skill level. And then now we'll design another assessment to test growth on the areas where we were showing we needed improvement.
Okay, so you can see the one category, which is identify real-life connections between words and their use. That was where you saw the multiple questions. There was about 12 questions on that. The test was pre-generated. It was part of the Engage New York module, so it was kept as the module had it. There was no change or adaptation in it, which is something we can look at for the future. We can look to change it to balance out the questions a little bit more. But for this, that's why I kind of focused on the real-world examples, because it had more data. So I focused on that in terms of how my students excelled with additional or needed additional support, as opposed to the questions that had only 1 or 2. But you can use it as how it's evaluated. So since there's, I think it's out of 12 on the Learning Standard 2.5, and then out of, I think it's just 1 on Learning Standard 1.2, I can use an evaluation there or computation there to kind of balance how much that was part of the test in order to drive my instruction and see where I really need to help my students.
Good evening. So when we developed the assessment or decided on the assessments, we looked at the data from the 3 all the way through 11th grade state assessments. So we knew that there were standards we needed to focus on based on that data. So we did kind of a backward design of looking in the 2nd grade, the 1st grade, and kindergarten, so we could trace that data to see where we needed additional work. So we added those additional questions, making sure that the assessments we chose and the questions we chose were addressing the standards that we needed to focus on.
So is that our district students' data, or is that the state's data that you used?
Well, this is
I
the
understand that's the
classroom data.
classroom data. When you designed the assessment, though, you said you looked back at the data,
That's our students' data.
our specific
So we
students'
looked
data.
at,
That's pretty cool.
yeah, 3rd grade through 8th grade state assessments, and then we looked at all the way to the 11th grade Regents exam so that we could see which standards we had needed additional focus on and how those traced all the
Got
way
it.
forward. And then we did the backward design.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Christine?
First of all, thank you very much. I thought it was very informative, and they always say that data is only as good as how it is used to inform instruction. And my question is, you, Ms. Dodona, seem extremely knowledgeable, and you're well-versed in data, and you talked about your small groups and how you're able to provide interventions to your children in your classroom. what is the district's plan, and maybe, for those that are watching this evening, how is what you know transferred throughout the other schools vertically, teachers that will have the students in the upcoming year when they prepare for third grade? How is information being disseminated? How often do you have the opportunity to dialogue, to share with your colleagues, to share some of the best practices that you're obviously using with your children to ensure consistency and that we're all calibrated in the district? So if you can just speak to us a little bit, and some of the trends that you see, some of the patterns that we're seeing with the data and the professional development that's planned in order to meet the needs of the children.
That may be more of a,
David, or Lisa?
I was very impressed with Ms. Dodona.
So Mrs. Eberlin is wonderful, and we have many grade level meetings where we get together and we're able to compare our data, talk about our data, and then talk about a good plan on how to drive instruction to help our students, because we can help each other, help students that, either need additional support or even provide enrichment activities for students that have excelled, because we can use all our knowledge to come together to do that. We share everything. I mean, even our Engage New York module is actually shared with the Mohansic second grade teachers as well.
Nice.
So all of the center activities I've created or other teachers have created, it's all together on a Google Doc,
Good.
or if it's a Google slide, anything, it's all together on that. So we share everything with each other. As for talking to grades, as third grade, we do have meetings where we discuss how our students are doing to help for next year. So that's also Mrs. Eberlin's doing. It's wonderful. So we have many faculty meetings where we meet together in order to show how we can better our school, not only with the academics, but with the socialization too, and helping children become mindful of their learning and own it. So
Great, thank you.
And just to add to that, Ms. Chester has grade level meetings with each of the K-5 departments, and they do talk about the vertical look of the data as well as what are the areas that we may need to tweak our instruction on. And all of that vertical alignment has happened over the last couple of years. And we do the same thing in math with Mrs. Froats, and it's really been such a value to have the opportunities for teachers to communicate and to understand, the needs of the students individually and as at a grade level. Our goal, as I mentioned earlier, is this system really needs to now be kind of spread beyond our K-5, moving into our 6-12 next year, and that's where our focus will be, to really push this there as well.
So I have one last question based upon that, because I see this, it's going to take off and it's going to explode. What do you need from us, or what does the district need to do? Because once this takes off, are we going to be able to keep up with it, David?
When I think of how we've redesigned and redeveloped our data department responsibilities moving forward, it was with this in mind, and I think that we're on a good path. With the board's permission, we talked about that earlier in the year, and we will have some changes to the data department, which will free up some of David's time to be in the buildings more where he needs to be to get this good work done. As Patrice mentioned, our infrastructure is there, our technology is there, we have all the devices that we can possibly utilize, and we're able to take all of these programs and really make the most use of it. I think our step now is to explain this more completely to the building administrators, to the data teams, and to the teachers, and to be able to come up with a plan on how we're going to make sure that this is happening K-12 now.
This is really impressive.
Can I add, Rep?
Yeah.
All right, and then I think when we look at the whole K-12 continuum, I think one of the things that we've looked at, especially moving into next year, on how to tie us together as a district, and again, going back to creating and establishing that culture and having a protocol, so a common language and vocabulary when we're talking about data, identifying the data points that we do use, how we use them, how we break them down, how we link them to the modules and can break out the standards, and just having an overall sense of data literacy amongst the district and amongst all of us. So I think one of the things that we'll be looking at, definitely, because I think it's always very important for us when we do anything, especially like this, that we can sustain it so it's very thoughtful in how we roll it out. It's very sound process, and we make sure that we do it in a way that it could take on, it will sustain itself, and that it's not just dependent on one or two people to keep it going, that it will become part of our culture and what we do every day, just because that's how we do it. And that will be our focus next year, to actually create a document, a data protocol for the district on how we analyze and look at data district-wide K-12 for curriculum and instruction.
That is terrific. Did you have anyone to add?
So I would just say, if you were going to want your child in a second grade classroom, it would be certainly Mrs. Dodona that you would want in front of
Because he
them.
hasn't made the assignments.
Now you're creating trouble.
But maybe, you know, yeah, there you go. So we're certainly proud of her and all the good work that she does, along with all of our other second grade teachers. I wouldn't leave them out, but certainly Mrs. Dodona is a leader in studying data and utilizing it to inform her instruction. I think what Tom, of all the comments that I heard, what Tom said was an interesting one for me, and that was the idea of team working together. Because if you look at the team, you say, okay, there are people from district office, Lisa and David, and certainly Patrice and Mike would certainly be key in the area of our students with needs. And then when you look at the building level, it would certainly be our principals, and Deirdre, as Mrs. Dodona has so ably indicated, does provide the time for the teachers working together on the grade level and also working with the grade above, the grade below. I think 11 years ago, what I would recall most is there was very little horizontal and very little vertical alignment and interaction, and that has changed completely. And people understand the value of working together and sharing ideas, sharing resources. And what I love about this whole presentation really is the immediacy, and I think that's something that you pointed out, the immediacy of taking the data and saying, this is not just the result of a test, this is the result of knowing what my students' strengths are and noticing some of the things that aren't as developed as I would like them to be, and how do I move forward. And you said something very important that's left out. You notice students that are really achieving at a higher level, so you're going to enrich them. You're not going to keep them at the same level when they need to go further. And you know the students that need more attention to a specific task or to a specific skill, and then you're going to spend time. And I also love the idea that everything was connected to real life. So this is what you learn in the classroom, this is how you apply it in the real world. And that's an important skill for the rest of their education experience. And I don't want to leave out Pam Chesser, because again, her ability to coach, and similar to Mary Froats, you're looking at what the final product is supposed to be in the high school. By the time they finish 12th grade, what is the content knowledge, what are the skills, what are the values, what are the attitudes, what are all of the things that they need to have to be successful in college and then eventually in career. So when you have coaches like Mary Froats and Pam Chesser, who really get what that looks like and how to enable the elementary teachers to see beyond the second grade, and I'm sure you do that. I know that immediately, unless Deirdre has other plans for you, second grade is like giving her up to Lori. Was that moving up to third grade? Wow! And you're going to take on a whole new curriculum, and you're not even whining. That's
Look how
such a great
excited
thing.
she is.
I thought Deirdre was going to be extremely generous and say she was going to give you to Lori.
Yeah, not going to happen.
Not going to happen, never. So I really did think that you did a great job demonstrating, all of you, how, first of all, David, thank you very much for that whole e-doctrina approach, because that's what you do with us, with the teachers also, the immediacy of feedback, and so I think that's great, and I think that the teachers are able to use the information that you get back to them in a timely manner to the benefit of the students is critical. And for all your hard work, and Lisa really overseeing it. I think the thing that I was most proud of this year was, Lisa took over Curriculum Council, and I just thought it was seamless, flawless, and exciting. And I think you gave the teachers opportunities and the administrators opportunities to lead and to bring their teachers and their buildings further along so that the students would benefit. At the end, it's always about the students and what we can do for them. So that was a great job, really great. Thank you. Great report.
Thank you, guys. This is awesome. Thank you so much.
Great job.
Great report.
All right. All right, can we move on?
Okay, you can go home, Mrs. Dodona.
Yes.
Let's wait for Lisa.
I'll be in your classroom tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Okay, Jackie,
We're going to go on to policy. So we have a deletion. So can I have a motion, be it resolved that the following policies shall be deleted from the policy manual because they are either obsolete, unnecessary, or included within other policies. So it's the 0115 exhibit for harassment and/or bullying, the 1000 community relations goal, the 1100R public information regulation, 1120E1, it's an application for access to health records, at 120E2, school district records exhibit.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, just so people know, we're taking out some of these exhibits or forms and things because they're available on our website and they change often. There's no need to have them in our policy. They're all accessible on our websites. So that's one of the reasons a lot of these are going. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have first reads. First read on the following policies. We have 0115, student harassment and bullying, 0115R, the regulation, 1100, the public information program, 1120, the regulation for school district records, 1130, news media relations, 1210, advisory committees, 1220, relations with community and business organizations, 1221, relations with parent organizations, 1235, civility and decorum, 1240, visitors to the school, 1240R, visitors to the school regulation. We were busy, right, Cheryl?
Yes, we were.
So anybody have any questions or concerns about any of those? All right, so we'll have we can adopt them next time. Cheryl, how many policies have we gone through? Did we get that number?
Yes, we did. Yvette did that for us today. So, drum roll, please. So far, since September 26, we've deleted 64 policies. We've reviewed and adopted 74 policies for a grand total of 138 policies
Yes.
reviewed.
And how many meetings have we had? Did we make our 10?
Yeah, it was.
I know.
I know.
No, I just want to go on the record as saying it was torture. Plain torture.
How many are left?
Oh, how many are left? You don't even want to know how many are left. We're getting there,
Where are we
though.
at percentage-wise? Do we
I don't know.
Oh, on a percentage.
We're probably about 25%. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We'll be going for a while.
of that, the September 26th.
Yeah, go ahead, Yvette.
Deleted 29 in the very initial meeting because we had policies from 1995 that were sifting through. So 50%
Yeah.
of that deletions came from the first meeting.
Yeah, it was, it's a lot.
We'll be busy for a while.
Yeah, we ain't going anywhere. All right.
Summer beach
Personnel.
reading.
Yeah, not really. All right, personnel. Upon recommendation of the superintendent, a motion that the following be approved. We have a seasonal substitute appointment in certified personnel. We have the extended school year program. We have extended school year for summer regents. We have, we're removing some teachers from the Pell list after their time has gone. Expired. And on classified personnel, we have a resignation for the purpose of retirement, and it's Janice Jarvie, who is a teacher's aide. I think that's everything.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are up to the business office. This is the long-awaited one for the town. So this is the tax abatement program, whereas the town of Yorktown created an industrial and commercial incentive board pursuant to section 485B of the Real Property Tax Code and consistent with the ICIB report adopted Local Law 1 of the 2017 Town Code, implementing a tax abatement program to incentivize and support new business, and whereas the town supervisor in the town of Yorktown has requested the Board of Education opt into the town's program, I'm going to go to the end. Be it resolved, the President of the Board of Education is hereby authorized to take such other and further action and to execute such documents as may be necessary or proper to carry out the foregoing resolution, and be it further resolved that the district clerk is hereby directed to file a copy of this resolution with the State Board of Equalization and Assessment and the Town Assessor of Yorktown.
You don't need the first, be it resolved?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby determines to participate in the program.
That would be important. So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Second.
Okay, Omni Group resolved upon recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education authorizes the execution of the Omni Group Services Agreement reinstatement for 17-18 as the district's 403B plan third-party administrator pending receipt of insurance documents.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Special education placements, a motion to accept the following special education placements as of June 5th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Gifts, grants, and donations, a motion to accept with gratitude. At the high school, a $1,400 grant from the Yorktown High School Parent Teacher Student Association for the purpose of the senior speaker, Matt Belace. $40 in a mini grant from the Synchrony Financial to be used for school materials and supplies. At Crom-Pond, a $1,000 grant from IBM recognition of the volunteer service of Zian Sho, a mother of student Eric Song, to be used for materials and supplies for the Creative Cardinals Destination Imagination Team. At Brookside, $233.05 from the United Way Easy Match program to be used for school materials and supplies. And at the district office, $250 from Barbara and Stephen Friedman of Yorktown to be applied towards the outstanding elementary school lunch balances.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We thank everybody for their generous donations. We are up to board comment, and before we start, I would just like to make a public comment, because it's not on the agenda. We sent out notices on Friday to all. We, as a board, have determined who the next superintendent of schools will be. It will be Dr. Ronald Hatter, who is the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction in Eastchester. He is also the brother of our board member, Christine Montero. Christine was not involved in the process whatsoever. She was never interviewed by our search consultants. She never sat in any interviews. She never sat on a committee. She never developed questions. She totally recused herself. She was very professional about it. Her brother was very professional about it. I don't even know if the two of them spoke during this whole process. It's not my business, but that's them. But we have determined he is the candidate to, and will be the next superintendent of schools. I just wanted to make that announcement publicly. On board comments, I can start with Christine. Go ahead.
Oh, my mic is off. To mention this evening that I will be resigning from my position as a school board trustee in the near future and prior to the start date of our new superintendent, Dr. Ronald Hatter, to avoid any conflict. I have been very fortunate and blessed to work with such a dynamic and professional and an incredible team of leaders led by our beloved superintendent of schools, Dr. Napolitano, Mrs. O'Shea, and Mr. Cole, and of course my colleagues, my fellow colleagues and dear colleagues on the Board of Ed. But in the best interest of our school district, and as we continue to do the work and move the district forward, it would be in the best interest of the Yorktown school community. So I will be resigning from my position in the near future, a date to be determined. Thank you.
Okay. Mike? Good. Rashmi?
I just wanted to thank the Foundation for Excellence for their generosity, and I know they worked very, very hard during the year to raise funds to fund these grants, and also look forward to having Dr. Hatter on board.
I'm good, thanks.
Christine?
I'm good, thank you.
To tag on to the Foundation for Excellence, they are a wonderful group, and we thank them. We also thank the PTAs that often coordinate with them and complement their grants so that they can further enhance a lot of the teacher experiences, and I know some of that took place this night, too. So we thank them all. Ralph, Lisa, Tom?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the next board meeting, which I keep saying is the wrong day, is on the 19th, will be held in the Yorktown High School auditorium.
Yes, it will be.
The reason being that we anticipate 37 between retirees and anniversary celebrants, plus their guests, plus the school personnel who comes to celebrate with them. We may just need a bigger venue, so I do believe that that's where the venue will be, and I will get notification out. And we're looking forward to that date. And I would just thank, I know that Christine has not resigned her position yet, but I thank you for your 7 years of service. You've been a wonderful addition, and we've all been very, very happy to work with you. So that may be premature, but I'm just saying it, and I'll repeat it again when you officially do it. And I think that's it. Oh, and one other thing, I'm sorry, Maria Roll pointed out from the PTA that Joe wasn't aware that the PTA was actually going to provide a grant for the high school this evening. Yeah, please.
The Yorktown High School PTA was going to fund 2 grants that were not able to be funded by the Foundation for Excellence. So it wasn't part of tonight's presentation, but they're going to fund 2 grants for Yorktown High School.
So they may, if they're ready on the 19th, which I'm not sure that they will be, but if they are, we'll let them go first on the agenda to just present that, because I think that was just like a little bit of a miscommunication, and I think Marie was really disappointed, and I don't think Joe even knew that. So we'll try to straighten that out. That was an internal glitch between FFE, PTA, high school. We just want to fix it in case they need to get the money to us before the year is out.
That's fine, whatever they need to do. Lisa, anything? Tom? All right, can I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, wait, and public comment, anybody wishing to speak? Public comment, no, okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Good night, everybody.